Okay, this is plants and crops. I've sort of switched it around a bit, if you just bear with me. Okay, so instead of looking more at the curriculum, I'm going to put the curriculum and the outcomes and dot points that you might be looking for in plants and crops and the science of plants and crops. So a definition by Baraja in 2014 is in relation to crop farming and livestock farming, the term agriculture may be defined as the art and science of growing plants and other crops and the raising of animals for food and other human needs or economic gain. So science keeps coming back in definitions, and the importance of students really understanding the science behind what's going on, as well as the technology. But without the science, you don't really know what you're doing with the technology. So we're going to look at the science of plants and crops. I've got heaps of experiments that you can do and some other resources as well. So when we look at the New South Wales curriculum, one of the points that you might look at is 4.3.1, which is implements responsible production of plant and animal products, and then also using the skills. So agriculture is 50% practical and 50% in the classroom. So the practical here is identifies and uses skills to manage the interaction within plant production enterprises. And then if we look at the Australian curriculum, it's a bit more broad, and one of them could be investigate the ways in which products, services, and environments evolve locally, regionally, and globally through the creativity, innovation, and enterprise of individuals and groups, and also how food and fiber are produced when designing managed environments and how these become more sustainable. So the areas I think that are really relevant in plants and crops is photosynthesis, germination, which I've got resources for, and we'll look at the plant anatomy of wheat, which is part of the cereal crops. So looking just really quickly with photosynthesis, if you were to explain it to a year 7, 8, even a 9, 10, in the simplest form, and again it depends on what type of student you have, but trying to get the basic concept across is that you've got these raw materials coming in, which is water and carbon dioxide, and you can question and then ask them, where does it come from? Where does water come from? Where does it need to go? And the carbon dioxide, well, where does that come from? How does the plant take that up? And a lot of students amaze me, even in year 12, they still think that photosynthesis might occur in the leaves. No, not it does occur in the leaves. So that it might occur in the roots or in the stem. They really don't still see or understand or really care where it comes from. And it's really important that they start to get an idea, because this is what life is all about. It's the most amazing chemical process. And so the equipment that's used in the plant is the sunlight, and also these little factories, these little bundles of factories that make glucose and carbohydrates or starch, or So where are these found? I think this is critical to impress students. Where are these found? And what do they look like? And you can do experiments where you put tape on top of a leaf, nail polish, clear nail polish, and then some tape, and then you rip off. You can rip off a layer of the top of the leaf, and they can look at it under a microscope, and they can start seeing, the stomas and where the chloroplasts are held, and then you can ask them, okay, well, go out and find some other leaves, and they can try it on the underside of the leaf. Now, are there chloroplasts underneath the leaf? Now, there's only certain types of plants that have the the stomas and the chloroplasts underneath the leaves, which are the Australian natives, because and some succulents, but you know, because they need to be able to retain water differently from European plants. And so there's loads of things you can do to get that point across that this is where photosynthesis occurs. And then you could ask the question about, well, what's the end product? What happens at the end of this? And you know, the glucose. Well, where is this made? Where does it stay? And the oxygen. You can do experiments, and I've got the experiments in the resource section of watching the oxygen escape from the plant. So I think this is a really cool process, and I know the universities at the moment there's a lot of focus on photosynthesis and making different types of energies, and which we'll cover in another section in Module 6 when we look at careers. Okay, and simple diagrams. There's heaps of them on the web. I think this is a particularly good one because it shows, you know, sort of structures. There's a leaf. We know what happens in the leaf, and some water and light. Oh, that's the other thing I forgot to mention. And how carbon dioxide enters through the stoma of the leaf. So just getting the vocabulary and just talk and conversation is really, really important. Okay, and if you want to have a quick quiz, where in the plants would you find chlorophyll? Why is photosynthesis important? Why is it important to grow a lot of roots before growing the leaves? Questions like that. So looking at, we're going to look at a type of plant structure, which are the monocots and the cereal crops. So a good way to get students to remember what cereal crops are is the acronym of BROW, so barley, rye, oats and wheat. And this might be a bit advanced for them, but just introduce Sadek's chart that there's a particular stage of growth that farmers look at, and at those different stages they might apply some urea because the leaves are getting too yellow, and these different stages give them ideas also of what the grain yield might look like. So that's something you could introduce. It's probably more year 9, 10, but okay, so the reproduction in wheat. So the growth cycle of wheat has the following divisions. So it's germination, and you need a particular time of the year. Now out here, they start planting around May, and they call it the first frost. So then the seedling's established, and then they start looking for leaf production and tillering. So tillering's the first stage, and then head differentiation and head emergence, and then flowering at the end. So wheat's gets pollinated through the wind, and then the grain starts filling in and starts maturing, hopefully with the right conditions. So, oops, I'll go back. So when a kernel is sown, the germination process begins, and the radicle and the seminal roots extend, and then they extend down, and then that's followed by the collaptial, which is the first start of the plant coming out of the soil. And roots can be initiated from several positions on the seedling, and both at the level of the seed and at the crown. And then the crown is usually separated from the seed by a subcrown. This is probably getting too much information, but so after the seedling emerges, the leaves or the tillers are produced at a rate of like 1 tiller for every 4 to 5 days, which is another indication that farmers can look at the health of their crop. And then we've got tillering and head differentiation. And so those are all the early stages. And then the tillers can form at certain points of attachment of the coleoptile and the lower leaves on the main shoot. So then, so that's probably enough that you need to know about tillers. And so then the lower stem starts to elongate, and it gets it has these internodes of the plant. So each stem has an internode up the plant, and it sort of progressively gets longer and longer. I think then the other important thing to discuss is once the stem gets to a certain point, the head is pushed out of the flag sheath. So the flag sheath is sort of the right before the flag leaf comes out, which is really where a lot of the photosynthesis occurs. And then flowering will start occurring, and then it'll start getting kernels, so the young kernels, and they will go through a particular stage as well of sort of swelling up with water. So they have sort of late milk stage and a soft doughy stage, a hard doughy stage. And so it's when they start losing their green color, and this is where farmers will come out and magically understand what's happening, because they just have this connection with the land that is quite kind of magical. So the kernel gets really hard and yellowish. Now, if they get a lot of rain during this period, sometimes that's not a good thing. And if they have heat waves, that's not a good thing either, because the flag leaf may die, and that's where all the photosynthesis occurs, which has an impact on the yield or how many kernels that are grown in the crop. So that's sort of a really brief, and it's probably too much for stage 4. So there's lots and lots of terms. There's tillers, flag leaves, anthers that you could probably use just in your class. And okay, so just lastly, you can test for starch at the end, which is quite a good activity to do. It's in the resources, but my point here is, with science, if you're using a science experiment, always consult your science department for the risk assessment, because you'd have to perform it like a science experiment. Okay, well, good luck with everything else.